and thank you for joining us at the webinar where we launch the Green Iftar Guidelines. Before I begin, I would just like to mention a few house rules. For your information, the webinar is being recorded. I would recommend to put your mics on mute. If you have any questions, please ask them at the Q&A box or just type it in the chat. We have a dedicated Q&A session at the end where I will help. Where we'll discuss all the questions from your chat. So let's begin. We start with our agenda for today for this webinar, where we will be going through. First and foremost, we will be going through a very small welcome and the opening remarks. After that, we will be joined by respected Imam Safed, where we will be hearing about the environmental responsibility in Islam. And after that, our highlight of the webinar is the guidelines, the Green Ramadan guideline itself, where we will be walking through the document and what it consists and how it will look like, followed by some of the case studies that were demonstrated in the guidelines document shared by our guest speakers. And finally, we'll have a call to action and a Q&A session at the end. So what is Green Iftar? So as we approach the holy month of Ramadan, we are all preparing our hearts and our homes. But today, we are going to talk about how we prepare our environment. So every year, millions of Muslim households hosting iftars, bringing our communities together. But we also take another perspective of looking at how it also generates a significant amount of footprint. So as we prepare our homes for the month of spiritual purification, sometimes we may overlook that often our iftars might be a burden to the climate of our earth. So when we look at this collective impact from millions of households, say, for example, if the collective impact of the mountains of the single-use plastic, the food waste, the energy consumption, we should ask ourselves a very hard question: is our feast contradict our fasting? So that's why we're here today, where our main agenda is, where we launched the Green Iftar Guidelines, which is an environmentally conscious Ramadan meal where we can reduce our waste and carbon emissions, but also maximizing and honoring our Islamic ethics. So today will not just be about logistics, how we manage a Green Iftar. It's also about legacy and how we can turn all these meals in the millions of Muslim households into an act of climate stewardship. To help us anchor this mission today, we should ask ourselves that what does Islam say about environmental responsibility? And for that, it is my honor that I introduce Brother Imam Safed, who is the Director of the United Nations Operations and Justice for All. And I hand over the floor to Brother Imam Safed to help us understand our environmental responsibility as Muslims. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Imam Safed, over to you.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Wonderful to be with all of you. Alhamdulillah, alladhi hadana li hadha wa ma kunna linahtadina lawla hadana Allah. We praise and thank God the Almighty for providing us the blessings of coming together and the blessings of the guidance of our faith of Islam. For without his guidance, we surely would be in loss. Let me begin with a supplication, with the dua. Allahumma barik lana fi Sha'ban wa balighna Ramadan. This was in part of a dua that the Prophet ﷺ used to make at the beginning of the month of Rajab, but we can also do it at the beginning of the month of Sha'ban. Oh Allah, grant us the blessings of this month of Sha'ban and give us the wherewithal and the opportunity to be alive and to witness Ramadan and the revelation of the Holy Quran, that entire month celebrating, commemorating the revelation of the Holy Quran. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ also said in the saying, Rajab Shahrullah wa Sha'banu Shahri wa Ramadan Shahr Ummati. That is, Rajab is the month of Allah, the traditional month of Umrah dating back to Sayyidina Ibrahim and Ismail alayhim salam. It was the month of Umrah during that time, and the month of Sha'ban, which he said is my month, Sha'ban al-Shahri, and I'll get back to that in a moment. And then he said, Ramadan Shahr Ummati. Indeed, the Ummah comes out during the month of Ramadan, alhamdulillah. Our masjids are full. In general, the community engages in the important act of worship and one of the pillars of Islam, of Siyam, of fasting, of Saum. And it is a time of connecting to the Quran, connecting to one another, and strengthening relationships that exist between the community. It is a time also of muwasat, that is the idea of empathy and connection to those who have less than us, in terms of sustenance, in terms of provision, in terms of safety, in terms of security. So it's a time to appreciate and to really connect in a very real way. And that can be, of course, done practically through the zakat and sadaqah distributions. That is also part of our faith. What I'd like to do is, in the few minutes that are given to me, is to just quickly outline some Islamic eco-concepts, eco-theological concepts and practices of the Prophet Muhammad, and then mention a little bit about ethical eating. I'm coming to you from my home in New Jersey, which is on the unceded ancestral lands of the Lenape peoples, the indigenous peoples of this land, who are subjected, like all of the indigenous peoples of this land, to a settler colonialism that not only resulted in their genocide, but also brought in a system which depletes the earth of her resources, denies it through subjugation and through transport to others, and removes the proper and correct relationship that we should have with one another and with the earth. And that is a relationship of harmony and a relationship of commonality and interdependence. And that has to be based on mutual respect. So, theologically speaking, human beings and jinn kind have been given a mandate and a purpose for existence upon the earth. I have created jinn and humankind for the explicit work, for the explicit purpose of serving me. This is a theological concept in Islam. It says that all human beings are religious naturalis. We are people that are by nature religious and connected to God. And service to God in Islam is very clear, is manifested through service to others, both human and non-human. So this loving surrender that we engage in, which we call Islam, Muslim means the one who lovingly surrenders to the will and the commands of God, is a manifestation at the highest level of this service to God through service to others. This is the purpose. Then how is that purpose fulfilled? The answer is through our function and through our role as human beings. In the Ja'ilun for Ardi Khalifa, I'm going to place within the earth a Khalifa. God informs the angels at the time of the creation of human beings with his hand, our mutual grandfather Adam, and from him Hawa, from the two, all of us. And as he is in the process of creating this human being, the angels bear witness to this, and the Holy Quran speaks of this moment in existence and in history, and tells us that Allah informs the angels he's going to create and place upon the earth a Khalifa. Khulafa and Khalifa, the singular Khulafa, the plural word, is often translated as steward, but I think a more proper translation would, in English language in particular, would be guardian caretaker. This is a responsibility that has been placed upon human beings, and we've accepted that responsibility. It's interesting to note that the Quran speaks of the responsibility, and that responsibility is explained by or understood by the Arabic word amana, which means trust. We are given the trust to care for the planet, to care for all that is on the planet. That responsibility was actually not first being offered to human beings. It was first offered to the heavens, the samawat, wal ard, wal jibal, and so on, and the mountains, and so on. And all of them in their intelligences, their various types of intelligences, which they have thought about it, and they said, this is not for us. This is a heavy responsibility. Human beings took that responsibility. And I hope in the taking of that responsibility, we are neither, as the mountains observed, the Lumen Jahula, we are neither going to be oppressive in it or we're going to be ignorant. Unfortunately, the case has been proven otherwise in many concerns. The term Khalifa appears in the Quran no less than 9 times. And in those 9 times, 7 of the times that it is mentioned in the Holy Quran, it is in the plural, khulafa, and it is in reference to all humanity. So this is sort of the staging of our purpose. We are to be sent upon earth. We are to be khulafa, caretakers and guardians. Now, the earth which we were sent to was a built environment, as our engineering friends like to say. In other words, everything that was necessary for life and existence was there. And the balance, the al-mizan, the balance of life, the web of life, if you will, was in place. Human beings were not necessary for that to be in place. But we have the ability as being khulafa to nurture, to develop, to cultivate, as well as to destroy. And the choice is ours. The ramifications also will be felt by us and by all others. This is sort of the staging, if you will, of Islam's concept with regard to responsibilities upon the earth. Fulfill the amana. The amana, or the trust, like any trust that we may have in legal words or in legal environment, is something which is not up to the individual to decide how to utilize the trust or how to execute the trust. If somebody offers a trust, it means, first of all, we are not the owners. So Allah is the owner, is the Rabb, is the Lord and sustainer, nourisher of all. Second, that we are obligated to fulfill the requirements of the trust and the stipulations of the trust, the conditions of the trust for its implementation. We don't have an option to say the trust has been given to us by someone else and I will do it in this way. And so this humility that comes with the understanding that we are here in the service of God, to service to others, is critical in our understanding of our role and function here as Muslims. Now, where is this trust implemented? This trust is implemented upon the earth and on the earth and with all those who are in the earth. Who is on the earth? Humans are on the earth, but we are not the only important part of the earth. Allah says in the Quran, the creation of the heavens and the earth is greater than you, O human beings. Don't be so arrogant. Takabbur is, this idea of arrogance, is the first major sin. It's the sin which takes on and manifests itself in all other types of evils that exist. So don't be arrogant. Have humility and recognize your responsibility. For with great power, with the relative free will which we have been given, comes great responsibility. So we have to manage the resources. And what's the key to managing the resources? And here we're going to tie it into the Ramadan, and I'll be concluding in a minute or two, is the idea that we must do so in keeping with moderation. The Quran designates the Muslim community in particular as being a community known as wasata. Wasata means the community of the middle road, the community of moderation, that which does not go to extremes. Once again, this is the designation. Whether we live up to that designation, whether we fulfill those requirements, is another question and is a challenge. The way in which we are able to act in moderation, and the Quran is very, very clear upon this, not just to human beings, but actually to all, not just to Muslims, but to all human beings. Kulu washrabu wa la tusrifu. Inna Allah la yuhibbul musrifin. Eat and drink of what we have provided for you, but do not exceed the limits. Do not do so in excess. Do not waste. That is the critical point. Islam, like all faiths, has this idea in concept, in theory, and in practice of an ethic of constraint, an ethic of conservation. Ramadan is the perfect time where we have a chance for an entire month to implement this more fully. Now, I'd like specifically to speak about some Islamic concepts that will tie to the iftar, the Green Iftar program, wonderful program, and outlining guidelines that are going to be shared here today. And that is going back to the issue of eating and drinking. This is the most direct way in which we interact with the natural world on a daily basis. Many of us find ourselves in cars, in facilities, in homes, in offices, etc., that disconnect us from the natural world. But entering into all of that is food. Food is the mechanism by which we, on a daily basis, interact with the natural world. In order for us to live, others must pass away, others must die. Plants, rice are living things. Animals are living things. They are placed upon the earth for their own purposes, for being part and parcel of the web of life and the critical role that they play in the web of life, but also for the benefit of others. And so we have to always be ethically and mentally conscious of this. And that's why we only are able to eat except by taking God's permission. Bismillah, except with the name of God. So we have to be conscious of this. So this idea of ethical and conscientious eating is something that is critical in our faith. Not to waste and to eat ethically and consciously. How do we do so? By adopting the food inputs that are necessary for our survival, for our nourishment, but they are two conditions or two conditional aspects to that. That they must be halal, which means permissible, and this has to do with the type of food, the type of animal that is being consumed, and the mechanism by which that animal's life or that creature's life has been taken so that we may eat. The second aspect is tayyib, wholesomeness. Now, tayyib, wholesomeness is something that it speaks to the issues of justice. It speaks to the issues of fairness and equity. Tayyib means everything from the growing of the plant in the ground that is grown, how it is nourished. Is it nourished through natural means, through organic means, or through chemical means, which disrupt and destroy the earth and result in runoffs, causing the destruction of many waterways around the world? How is it grown? How is it harvested? Who harvests it, and how are they paid for and compensated for the harvest? How then is it transported from the farm to the fork? And how do we consume it upon our plate, and how does it leave our plate? All of these things in the chain of consumption from farm to fork have to be done in a way which is tayyib, which is wholesome, and that means reflected in issues of justice. It is critical for us to be conscious of that. One of the du'as that we make, or supplications we make after we eat, for example, Alhamdulillah alladhi at'amana wa saqana wa ja'alana min al-muslimin. Praise be to God who has provided us this food and this drink and made us amongst those who are lovingly surrendering to Him. Wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh ala sahib hadha ta'am al-akilin. And may God's mercy and blessings be upon the sahib, the sahaba, the companion who has accompanied this food all the way from its placement in the ground until now. We honor the companions of the food, those who helped it to bring it to our plate, by making sure that justice is done on every step and every point along the way of this site. We are instructed in Islam part of this wholesomeness and this eating, once again, the rule is eat and drink, but do not waste. 40%, we are told by the environmental scientists and food scientists, of food in the Western world, in the global North in particular, is wasted from their plate. In other words, 40% of what we place on our plates in general is thrown in the garbage. And for the global South, 40% is wasted before it even gets to our plate. So this is an idea that waste is something that is causing, seriously undermining our ethical and conscientious eating. We have to be aware of it. There's an interesting saying of the Prophet Muhammad, and I'll complete it with this, that speaks about how we eat. The basic etiquette and adab of eating has to do with, he says, begin with that part of the food which is closest to you. In other words, don't overreach to the other side. Start with the part of the plate that is closest to you, and you'll find people that eat food on plates, and this plays itself out in many Muslim households by sharing from one plate, for example, and eating the section that is closest to you. But if you have separate plates, then you'll see that people rotate their plates so that the food they're consuming is not on the other side of the plate, it's in front of them. And this is a practice, but this practice has implications in the way in which we purchase, in which we gain our foods. Eat that which is closest to you. Eat that which is nearby, not produced in another part of the world. Every piece of food that we take into ourselves has a energy input that has went into the production of that food. If we waste it, we've destroyed and we've wasted that, not just that piece of food, but the entire energy input that went into the production and the transportation of that food. This encouragement to eat from the part of your plate that is closest to you is an encouragement to eat locally. We speak about locavores. Here in the United States, we have what are known as CSAs, community-supported agriculture, where in your local farms, you pre-buy parts of the anticipated crop at the end of the year, although you have no guarantees, and you pre-buy it so that the farmers have what they need to plant the food, to grow it organically, and you take a share in that. Something for us to keep in mind as we sort of source our food. And then the last point I want to say is with regard to iftar in particular. I know this is going to be covered in greater detail. One of the blessings about iftar is it's one of the unrecognized acts of worship during the month of Ramadan, the breaking of the fast together. And there's many spiritual and social aspects to it. But one of the interesting things about it is that in the mathematics of iftar, in Allah's mathematics, the sharing of iftar with somebody else, helping someone to break their fast, results in the transference of that person's iftar, all the rewards of their fast for that day, to the person who gives them and provides the iftar. So it's incentive for us to share what we have with others. But here's the mathematics. The person whose iftar you are able to access or to take the blessings of that fast for that day, for that person, does not deprive them of the blessings of that fast. So they get to keep their fast and you get to have their fast. But my point on the iftar is, when does that transference of the blessings of the fasting of the person take place? It takes place with the first bite. It takes place with the first bite. So whether it's a date or a sip of water, something that someone can share even in the most difficult of circumstances. We know many of our siblings throughout the world are in difficult circumstances. May Allah make it easy for them and open our hearts to them this Ramadan. That transference is not required for a 7-course iftar meal where you invite the only top-notch people to come to your iftar. But that transference takes place on the first bite. The rest is not required for the transference of the blessings of the fasting. And the blessings of the food itself relies on the last piece of food on the plate being placed in the mouth, the last piece of rice, the last piece of date, the last piece of meat being placed in one's mouth. And if one cannot complete it, then we turn our iftars into leftars. We say in America, we turn our iftars into leftars. In other words, we can use them again the following night and not throw them out in the waste. So here's some ideas and thoughts I wanted to share with you. I asked that Allah accept it from me, and inshallah, I went over my time, but thank you for the opportunity to share. I'm looking forward to learning more and the conversation that follows.
Jazakallah khair, Brother Imam Safed. That was a powerful reminder that, especially the concept of minimizing waste and following it up on the next meal. I think that also resonates with the also the part where in the month of Ramadan, where all the ummah comes out, where we spend our time connecting to the Quran and all these important lessons that we should be sharing amongst us all. So thank you so much for your kind remarks. So and now I would like to move forward to our next part of the webinar, is to actually document walkthrough of the guidelines itself. So I will be sharing the document on my screen. I'll take a second to just switch my screen. I hope it's visible to all. May
Yes,
I please
we can
have
see it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much. So this will be available on the Ummah for Earth website after this webinar as well, if it's not already live. So the Green Iftar Guidelines is a document where it's sectioned in 9 parts. On the where we have, if I scroll down, you can see we have an introduction to this guideline. We also have a purpose and its strategy. We have some best practices and how these practices have been obtained by demonstrating some case studies from our allies and some measurable metrics that we can use to measure our impact, reducing our footprints, and a conclusion and supporting documents and resources. I will not be going through this document word by word, but just so that I can give you all an overview. The document begins by defining the Green Iftar as not, as mentioned in the early stages of the webinar, that it's not just an event, but also a meal that is designed to minimize the environmental impacts, but also maximizing the spiritual benefits as well. It kind of draws a powerful parallel between the Haudenosaunee, the indigenous people in Canada, that teach that your decision should last the next 7 generations. So as like a position sustainability as consistent and act as responsible successors in the earth. When we move to the purpose, this was just, all of these points were actually very well described by Imam Safed just a moment ago about the principle and its ecological meaning. For example, Khilafa, which explains as us as the stewardship arts custodians, and we also where it was also described about the moderation and not being extravagant with our consumption. And also you look at ihsan, which is the eco-excellence, is worship. For example, we can find that out in aim for using 0 single-use plastics. So this framing is critical for getting communal buy-in, as these positions sustainability as consistent with Sunnah. For the strategy of these guidelines is where we provide a reference table as a blueprint of the document. For example, it identifies It identifies the major waste hotspots in the kitchen, or it could be as simple as planning the menu, water usage. It could also be logistics. For example, we can always, it can be described as simple as the what, why, and how. For example, if we look at menu planning, we can always try to support with a local market produce. We can always replace it with plant-based alternatives. We can also always think about using renewable power as our energy source. We can also look at innovative options as using only a 2-bucket wash system for all the dishes after our iftar meals. We can also, in terms of removing single-use plastics, we can also think about tableware and packaging to bring your own utensils. And it could also be as removing plastic packaging for eco-friendly options. It could also be as easy as taking your own bags. Some more blueprints for the guidelines is mobility on how our movement and logistics contribute to the carbon footprints is to use carpooling, sharing transport. We can also have a simple waste management structure during the iftar by having clearly labeled bins, or we can have volunteers guide us on how we can do that. Some way we can also have teachable moments during these events to have community awareness is to have a very short green khutbah, some eco quizzes for engaging the youth, but also we can reach out to the wider audience by having social media campaigns and generating content. If we move on to the next stage, a very small simplified action list so that you can start as first-time organizers. If you want to create an event in a small mosque or in your own community, or you can also follow some guidelines that we've given you if you want to hold a larger, wider event. Furthermore, some of the best practices that we have received is one example is to buying local produce from the farmers markets and cutting farmers' waste and budget. As mentioned before, if we try to set up a simple waste management system for collecting the peels of our fruits and vegetables, it could be easily converted into compost. We can also do the prophetic math with a clear jug, as mentioned, and it can also be engaging as to how many plates we can wash using the water that we have as a challenge. As mentioned before, we can create social media content if we very simply do a 60 to 90-second reel of all the best practices we've done during our green iftars. This could be an educational content that we can always share with our social media networks. Some of the recommendations that we also received is if we have too much food, sometimes we can always package these leftovers for taking them away to their homes. If we can have them at the next meal for the next day's suhoor, that could also be arranged, or we can have it arranged for pickup to the nearest local shelter. For example, if you're also having this as an outdoor event, we should also think about a backup location if we have a weather warning coming up. We should have waterproof covers for our waste stations, and also have a very simple menu so that it can be served quickly. Some of our budgetary recommendation is we can always work with a local restaurant for a leftover donation. We could also if we are conducting the green iftar nearby a mosque or at the mosque, we can use the existing dishes and have volunteers help and support. We could also have volunteers to collect the vegetable peels, as mentioned before, for creating composts for our own homes, or if there's a community garden nearby, we can have it sent to, we can use those compost for the gardens. For having low cost, high impact interventions for our iftar, we could always have as simply a waste management system that is clearly labeled. We could always get a digital scale for our waste measurement so that we start to measuring our waste and so forth. We also have case studies and lessons learned from our allies. These we will talk about these in detail in the next part of our webinar. So I will just quickly run through. We have 4 case studies as part of the guidelines document, 4 or 5. And in the next session of this guideline document covers how we can monitor and measure our some sort of metrics so that we can measure and improve. Say, for example, if we talk about single-use items, ideally we would want our target to be 0, but if it's not achievable at the first attempt, we can always target it as 0. So we have our data sources, so we can we have our head counts from our RSVPs. We can always measure it that way. As mentioned just briefly, that we could use waste, a digital scale to measure our waste. So we target less than 100 grams of waste per capita. We could also have measured that we will be using at least a quarter of our energy should come from renewable sources, as well as we can also we can incentivize it by a behavioral change pledge, and we can give out an eco-sadaqa certificates for communities or mosques or a group for adopting these green iftar practices. Finally, the guidelines document concludes just by embodying the spirit and the urgency of climate action and learning from real world case studies, so that how Muslims around the world can transform Ramadan into an ecological leadership, and they can use this and lead by example for all of as a lesson for the Ummah. And it could also be recommended to use these learnings and these small communal interventions to, like, for example, switching to plant-based menus and eliminating single-use plastics to be propagated all across the communities. To end this part of the webinar, the document finishes with a call to action to embrace green iftars for a sustainable future. This document can be used as a starting point to utilize these practical steps and contribute to a meaningful change, and also to join a global movement for a healthier planet for generations to come. So now I would like to go back to our presentation, and all of these points that were mentioned in the webinar, how we can learn it, and the best way to learn it is to see them and see these principles in action. And for that, I would now like to invite or give the floor to Brother Ariz Riaz from Enviro Muslims Canada to demonstrate for their case study on how they've adopted Green Ramadan guidelines. So I would like to hand over the floor to Brother Ariz Riaz.
Sister Ariz.
Thank you, Rafnan and Nohad. I hope everyone is doing great today. I'll be speaking a little bit about the work that Enviro Muslims has done on Green Ramadan. But let me introduce the organization first. So, Enviro Muslims is a member of Ummah for Earth Alliance. It's a nonprofit organization that came together as a community group, as a grassroots community group, um, in 2019, right before COVID hit. The organization was founded by three Muslim women based in Canada who came from different aspects of work. One worked in the health sector, one in education sector, and one in environment sector. And the idea behind getting the group together was to have a space where Muslim community in Canada can learn about the environmental issues and be encouraged and educated and empowered to take action around it. So naturally, a lot of the work that we did was focusing around mosques and was focusing on the different traditions and rituals that take place in Islam. And obviously, Ramadan is a really big aspect of it. I actually have a fun story as to how I got connected to Enviro Muslims. I come with a climate change background of more than 18 years, but I used to work in climate policy and climate finance before I moved to Canada. Um, when we moved to Canada, my husband and I were invited to a number of different weddings and iftars and all of that, and they happened at the Central Mosque where we were located. So my very first kind of introduction in Canada to Muslim gatherings was looking at it from an environmental point of view, and that iftar was nowhere near zero waste at all. There was a lot of plastic bottles there. There was a lot of food waste there. It was a very happy gathering, but for me, it was very solemn. And I think the one takeaway that I had from that gathering was that I really needed to get involved in doing something about it. So I found out that Enviro Muslims was a new organization that was being formed, and I got connected to them, and I've been working with them since then. Um, we have done a lot of different types of work around Ramadan over the couple of years, ranging from developing different toolkits for the mosque staff on how to arrange for Ramadan from an ethical and environmental point of view, to actually supporting mosques one-on-one with mentoring and coaching and with seed funding to be able to do these projects in practical and in principle. However, the case study today is really going to focus on some of the work that we did in 2025, which is what is featured in the guidelines that Brother Rafnan kindly shared. And we'll go through some of the lessons that came from the work that we did. If you can move to the next slide, please. In 2025, most of our intention with the work that we wanted to do on Ramadan kind of focused on three main outcomes. We wanted to engage the broader Muslim community through some sort of a fun campaign that brings them in as a low entry point, as a low barrier entry point for people. We also wanted to create a space where there can be a little more educational activity around Ramadan because the work that we had done previously featured a lot more work on practical steps that people can take and mosques can take. So we wanted to create some sort of space around education. And we wanted to ensure that the congregations were engaging on some sort of eco-friendly practices, but were happening within the concept of Ramadan. Because if we talk about save the planet, not a lot of people can resonate with it because not everyone lives in a climate bubble like we do. But if we talk about green iftar, it is something that people can relate to because it is related to a ritual that they go through anyways. They are going to be hosting iftars, they are going to be joining iftars. This is something that they will be doing regardless, and there are different business cases to be made in terms of why they should be catering to an environmental, responsible, and ethical iftar. So we wanted to ensure that that was something that was catered to in the work that we were doing. Next slide, please. So in 2025, the fun element that we did was we revamped our Eco Ramadan Challenge. So Eco Ramadan Challenge is basically a calendar that we made up with um, a a bite-sized action that people can take regardless of where they are. So it's basically a calendar that gives you 30 actions that you can take across the month of Ramadan, and you can really do it anywhere. So you can do it in your house, you can do it in your dorm if you're a student. It's not something that you would have to go out of the way to find something in order to take the action. We had a lot of success over the past years in how people have treated Eco Ramadan Challenge. We always have it at our community booths when we do different events and join different festivals. And it is one of the first things that captures the attention of families, especially because it looks like a really fun challenge that they can do together. We've seen people take it along with different fridge magnets so they can put it up on their fridge and work on it through the month of Ramadan. In 2025, we had more than 9,000 views on the challenge calendar on our social media accounts. We saw 500 interactions, and we got more than 100 new followers on our social media account when we posted the Eco Ramadan challenge. I will share the link to the calendar. It is in a PDF form, so you can download it and you can use it that way. Or if you want to print it, it's a printable form ready. Um, we with the Eco Ramadan challenge, the idea really is what I just talked about, right? Like it's being able to provide people with bite-sized actions that they can easily take and something that is very tangible. So if they're taking an action a day, it is easy for them to do and also easy for them to see the impact that it can make. So that's really the idea behind that. If we can move to the next slide, please. We also hosted a number of different zero waste iftars, and we also had a zero waste Eid as well. With the zero waste iftars, as I pointed out, we did want to include an educational component. So there was one that was hosted by Green Ummah, which is another member of Ummah for Earth Alliance. Green Ummah is a non-profit organization that focuses on Islamic-based education and curriculum. And they hosted an educational workshop at University of Toronto with the Muslim Student Association. They also passed around 100 water bottles to reusable water bottles to the attendees. It was interesting because there was a lot of positive feedback with the workshop of people, because these were students that came from engineering backgrounds and law and medicine and liberal arts. So not necessarily people that are climate aware, but they found it very interesting to look at plastic waste from the point of view of like ancestral responsibility and also from prophetic practices as well. So it was quite interesting how sometimes, because of the work that we do and because of how involved we are in these things, we kind of forget that there are people that may not have thought about these things from that point of view, and be able to go back to those kind of basic conversations has been found really valuable in the work that we did with the zero waste iftars. The other zero waste iftar that we funded was at Rhoda Foundation in Ottawa, the capital of Canada. And they bought reusable dinnerware for 150 people. And they also hosted more like community well-being kind of conversations as part of those zero waste iftars. We really loved the idea of Rhoda Foundation doing that, and we decided to fund them mainly because we wanted to show that we want to move from disposable to durable. And if we're doing actions that will ensure that this work can continue and it can make impact with more people, it makes a lot more sense for that organization to take on that kind of work. If we can move to the next slide, please. Before I wrap up, just quickly want to mention that Brother Rafran mentioned this earlier when he was walking you through the document, that a lot of the work that we do here in Canada is based on Indigenous wisdom and supporting Indigenous solidarity. So the Indigenous people in Canada who were here before the British and the French came, um, they have the seventh generation principle through which they view all environmental work. And as Brother Ifnan mentioned earlier, and it is part of the guidelines for Green Iftar. The Haudenosaunee seven generation principles talk about looking at anything that we do from the point of view of seven generations. So, what is the impact of any action that we're taking for seven more generations to come? And we have been viewing the work that we are doing as Enviro Muslims in Canada from that angle as well. We are trying to encourage the Muslim community here to view Ramadan not just as, it's a tradition, we're going to do it. It's less of a chore and more of kind of like a lifestyle. And for them to think about it as not just green living or sustainable action, one-off sustainable action, but more so as making an old tradition new again and continue to look at it from the lens of, not just ancestral responsibility that has been handed over to Muslims, but also something that we need to ensure for future generations going forward. So on the slide right here, I've just noted down some of the ways that you can get in touch with us if you want to learn more about the work that we did, or if you need any support in the work that you potentially want to be doing around green iftars and green Ramadan this year. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sister Rage. Apologies for the mistake at the start. Thank you so much for highlighting all the amazing work that you're doing and for highlighting the experience. I really believe that the bite-size calendar that you've shared can be adopted very easily by everybody. So I hope we can work towards the same goal. Now, thank you again. Now I would like to hand over the floor to our next speaker, Brother Abdul Qadir from Banlastic, Egypt. So over to you, Brother Abdul Qadir.
Hello everyone. Thank you, Rafnan. Thanks for your moderation. I'm so happy for being with you now. Let me, in my speech, during my speech, I'll be introducing Banlastic's experience in organizing green iftars. Actually, we are so happy of publishing this guideline since we have a good experience in organizing green iftars since maybe 2021. But firstly, we started by organizing just closed iftars and closed green iftars during Ramadan. It was just open for Banlastics team of volunteers, which is like a team of 40 to 50 volunteers. The next year, we started to open it to our community, the community of Balnastic, which include all people who attended our previous events. And in 2023, we decided to take like a larger step for this and to organize a public green iftar which is accessible for all people to apply or to register and attend, and it take place in a common area that which is accessible for everyone. So That's why, as you see in these photos, in the left side, it's the photo of the first volume or the first version of the Green Iftar. In the right side, the second one, which took place last year in 2025 in partnership with Ummah for Earth and Greenpeace. Um, as I mentioned, this kind of green iftars or this kind of event, uh, we always target accessing the public community and raising their awareness either towards responsible consumption, towards the Islamic rules regarding this kind of consumption, towards the environmental awareness generally. That's why can you get the next slide? Yes, that's why we decided to have like a kind of not just a green iftar. We decided to have um, an inclusive event that include different types of workshops and actions that people got engaged before getting to eat and to experience the iftar. And this takes place in the shape of, as I mentioned, interactive workshops, like, for example, a workshop for people to learn how to plant, how to make like urban gardening or to plant their balconies, for example. Another one for people to try and experience an interactive environmental game. Last year we had a various type of events of workshops. Sorry, like creating. Recycled or upcycled paper notebooks. So and every year we are so keen to have various types of workshops and different types of workshops in order to engage people and to encourage them to use these areas and these spaces, and also to merge the message, the environmental message, with the religion or religious message, and also the humanitarian message as well. This is the first step or the first category in our type of green events, to host interactive, different and various interactive workshops. The next slide, please. Yes, when it comes to food or to the iftar itself, also our vision is to target local and homemade food. For example, during the first version, we ordered our food from a farm in the near to Alexandria, because we are based in Alexandria, in Egypt. So we ordered the food from from this farm, and it was totally made by women in this farm, who are already works as farmers, or the wives of the farmers in this farm. And last year we also ordered from housewives or households in their homes, who have like some pages on Facebook or other social media platforms, who are starting to have a revenue stream from this kind of food and activities. So as an encouragement for them, we also deal with them to have all these local made food, oriental food, or traditional food as well. um, and of course to have it one of the main interests is to include all the items in this meal. So if you are vegan or vegetarian, you can eat. If you eat meat or other kinds of protein, you also will find also your choice in this meal. Then next slide, please. Um, then yeah. Um, Anyway, also another thing regarding the food, I wanted to highlight that when we finish the iftar, we also we have a plan for the leftovers, as Rafnan mentioned during the introducing the guideline. We have also a plan for the leftovers, is to keep it and to save it, and to firstly to segregate it, the like the good leftovers are repackaged and provided to, for example, homeless people or people in poor districts, as a kind of it'am, especially in Ramadan. And the other ones or the bad leftovers, or the very used leftovers, we use them as a kind of food for street dogs and cats and so on. Especially that we, as I mentioned before, we host this in a large area or a large public park in Alexandria called El Chalalat Park, which is, by the way, one of the oldest public parks, and has a very massive historical background and historical like image in the city. Going to other category in the green iftar is the giveaways. Since we are in Ramadan, and since we are encouraging people to and raising the awareness of people, so it's good to have like an incentive for them, or to we can say it like a kind of appreciation and gratefulness, to say for them thank you for taking the step and the initiative to participate. So that's why we also every year we are so keen to provide different kinds of giveaways, which are in the first place locally made, and in the second place are for sure eco-friendly. For example, as you see in this photo, is the a kind of rugs, which is called in Egypt kilim. It's a kind of rugs that is it's locally made in Egypt by women, also from upcycled shredded cloth, uh, through weaving them, and then getting this kind of rug as an output. Also, this giveaway, this bookmarks, for example, we had like printed them, designed and printed them with in collaboration with Oma for Earth last year. And by the way, we have the software copy of them. We can share it with you, or we had already shared it with you last year, and we can reshare it again with you, for everyone who want to host a green iftar this year. It will be a very, very useful and amazing giveaway. It highlights all the pillars of Ummah for Earth, like stewardship, balance, wisdom, and action, and so on. And also highlights different kinds of ayat or verses from the Quran, and hadith also for the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this is the yes, for the next one, for sure, since our goal is to spread the environmental awareness through different kinds of awareness, or different kinds of interaction. We shouldn't neglect, or we shouldn't forget the plastic or the single-use plastic element. That's why we always encourage people, as you may see, or you may had noticed in the Ramadan guidelines. We always encourage them through the Facebook event, for example, and we send them some reminders through email to bring your own cup, bring your own plate, bring your own cutlery, bring your own water flask, for example, and we offer for sure drinkable water. And after eating or after the iftar, they have also the responsibility to clean their own utensils and take them back to home. So it's a kind of, in the first place, saving the environment and saving the plastic consumption, and also giving the people the responsibility to manage their own waste and manage their consumption, and to consume wisely. Um, the last thing that I would like to mention, that we always welcome collaborations with different and various CSOs, civil society organizations, and non-governmental organizations, either in the organizing the event, or maybe for um, like offering their services as a workshop, for example. We believe that this mega event, this one day mega event, is a great opportunity for getting the bones closer with the community, or the green community in one city. That's it for now, or for Banlastics experience to organize or to host two different, and for me, I can say that that they are impactful versions of the green iftars during 2023 and 2025. And this year we are so excited to host also the Green Iftar, maybe during the middle 10 days of Ramadan. And for sure, as I mentioned, we will keep the innovation and the creativity mode on, in order to offer another successful and more successful and impactful experience. Thank you for your time, and hope you agreed, and Mubarak Ramadan, inshallah.
Thank you, Brother Abdul Qadir, for your showcasing your amazing work that you're doing in Egypt. I personally resonated with the engaging activities and the workshops that you do, because that is something we also try to do over here in Bangladesh, is to kind of have it a community-led and engaging participatory interventions. Thank you again for sharing your activities. Now, for our next speaker, I would like to invite Brother Abdullah from GGF Jordan. So over to you, Brother Abdullah.
Hello, everybody. I hope all is well with you. I will speak briefly, actually, because as we GGF, we implemented the Green Iftar for first time last year. So maybe my colleagues, Abdul Qadir, and also our colleague from Muslim Canada, they shared the most common practices. So just I would like just to share the future things that we did last year. Before that, just I want to brief you about our organization. We Green Generation Foundation, established in 2014. We are working to empower youth in the environmental issues, and also we were as the first organization that we joined Ummah for Earth Alliance. And also we implemented some activities, especially the collective action, which is climate action, climate march, long hike from Amman to Aqaba. So for Ramadan Bush and the activities that relate to Ramadan, actually we were participating as just on the digital content. But last year we decided to implement the Green Iftar because we inspired by our colleague from Pan Plastic that they organized this activity. And the other thing that our audience and network, because our beneficiaries, they are youth, undergraduated and graduate students from the universities, and also families. They, they always encourage us to implement the activities, especially the climate initiatives that based on the faith. They always prefer or the high engagement of our audience. Let's say that the activities that related to the Ummah for Earth, and therefore they in the last year planning they requested us to organize the Green Iftar. Actually, we organized it last year as under the theme how we can advance the role of the community to implement the climate initiative based on faith. And actually, we have just one session, panel discussion. We invited any national expert and someone who has the technical expert in climate change, and he spoke about how we can encourage the land use and land management and protection and restoration, which is under the principle which called in Arabic or in Islamic al-hima, which is protected the land and restoration. And also we had also educator. She's working on the Islamic center for educating Quran, and she emphasized that it's very important to link the principle of Islam in terms Quran, ayat Quran or hadith to highlight the principles of promoting the climate initiative based on faith. And then the last thing that I want to tell you that the food was vegetarian, as the Jordanian people that they might prefer to eat like meat and chicken, and also the most traditional or popular traditional food like mansaf, magluba, and so on. So it was challengeable for us to highlight or sorry to provide the vegetarian food, but we explained that on the session that this is the first iftar, green iftar, and we informed them about the benefit of the vegetarian food and linked that to the climate change impacts. So this is as overall our reflection for Green Iftar that we organized last year. And also we committed with the sustainable green iftar guide, which is published by Ummah for Earth. And I would like to thank all the teams of Ummah for Earth for producing this guide, and also for our colleagues from our allies for contributing for this collective work. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Brother Abdul Qadir, for sharing your learnings and your challenges. I really believe when you had the challenges during your iftar about the change of the food style from meat to vegetarian, I think that's when you shared about the importance of the climate change impact. I'm sure that is the best way of raising awareness, and like you said in the beginning, advancing the role of the community in terms of climate action by conducting these high-level panel discussions as well as practicing these in real time. So thank you so much again, Brother Abdullah. We now move to our last speaker for our webinar. Now I would like to invite our sister Rizka Rahman from Greenpeace Indonesia. So over the floor to you, Sister Rizka.
Thank you, Rafnan. Assalamualaikum, everybody. My name is Rizka Rahman. I'm currently the lead for Uma for Earth for Greenpeace Indonesia. Just a little bit of background. Greenpeace Indonesia is part of Greenpeace International, environmental campaign organization that is focused on campaigning about the climate, biodiversity, and also in social economic. We have the project Uma for Earth has been in Indonesia since 2020, and ever since we have conducted regularly green iftar events almost every year. And last year was a little bit different than the previous years because we were conducting the green iftar gathering with affected communities. So, just a bit of background. Last year, the capital city, Jakarta, was hit with one of the worst flooding in recent history. Um, and some areas were flooded to up to 4 meters, or and some were basically the whole buildings, whole houses were submerged under floodwater because of deforestation in the upstream area of uh, of Jakarta. So, could you please move to the next slide? Okay, so last year, Green Iftar Gathering was conducted with Jakarta flood victims, particularly located in East Jakarta. The main objective is basically to share and give back during Ramadan. We know Ramadan is always associated with a month of giving, and we wanted to share that spirit with those who have been affected by the flood last year. Aside from giving back to the community, we also saw additional opportunities to integrate with the Uma for Earth campaigns. It was an opportunity for us to educate about the climate crisis, particularly about the visible impact of climate crisis as the consequence of human actions. So, because flooding has been a regular event, quote unquote, for a lot of people in Jakarta, a lot of them think that uh, flooding is is their fate. You know, it's something that Allah wants us to experience, and but uh, not many realize that flooding and also heavy rainfall is actually the consequence of our own actions because of our failure to protect the environment. And so we thought that with the recent flooding, we thought that it would present a perfect opportunity for us to educate them on how the flooding is not just a fate, not just the qadr of Allah, but is also the consequence of what we have done, you know, using our heavy dependence on fossil fuels, you know, our failure to protect the forest. And so we try to to kind of to educate people, especially those coming from disadvantaged socioeconomic backgrounds who is not particularly familiar with climate issues. We also encourage through the Green Iftar gathering, we also encourage the residents and also Muslims in general to apply low waste iftar concept. Of course, being in Indonesia, we're utilizing Indonesian local wisdom. For example, if as you can see here, we use bamboo containers which can be composted or even reused for other purposes at home. Could you please move to the next slide? Okay, so this is basically the some of the pictures that we have from the gathering. We invited the local residents and the congregants to have knowledge sharing about climate and also encourage them that having a low waste iftar is possible and we can do it consistent. If we can do it consistently, we are also giving back to the environment and kind of embody the Islamic teachings, especially on Khilafah. And so this kind of approach of organizing iftars is not only applied during this gathering, but also every time we have iftar gathering, we try to apply low waste iftar. So we utilize bamboo trays, which you can see over here, which can be used to serve food and snacks buffet style, and also utilizing other compostable or reusable containers so that we can reduce the amount of plastics, particularly, and also the amount of waste that we have from the iftar. And Green Iftar is one of those activities that promotes solution and demonstrate that a low waste Ramadan, or Ramadan using reusable containers is highly achievable and encourage all Muslims to practice it. And we are excited to have this year iftar event, this time with donors, and we will implement it in this year's upcoming iftar events with our donors and also our partners as well. Back to you, Rafnan. Thank you.
Rafnan?
Sorry, I was on mute. My apologies. I was saying thank you, Sister Riska, for sharing your story on your iftar gatherings. And I really like the bamboo container. In Bangladesh, we have a similar eco-friendly approach where we have betel leaf plates, which look very similar to what you have and which are very eco-friendly, can be reused for using as plates. So I really like how you've been using that. So thank you again. We've now reached the end of our speaker sessions. We are almost at the end of our webinar. Now I would like to welcome everybody to a call to action. So since the start of the webinar, we've talked about strategies. Brother Imam Safed has talked about strategies, theological concepts. We've learned from our speakers how they've translated those into real world actions and activities. And I want to end the webinar by looking at what these actions actually mean, like how can we start following these. And we do not, whatever we have learned and seen today, we do not have to do everything from day one. We can start small. So I have two small actions that we can start. One is maybe you stop using plastic water bottles. As you already know, when we discard these plastic cups or any sort of single-use plastic materials, they will remain in the earth for many, many years, even after we've passed away. So refusing to use these single-use plastic items is not just a decision, it's like an act of character. It's like that our convenience does not matter, but then the health of what Allah has given to us. So it's like I said in the start, it will not just be a logistical solution, it's creating leaving behind a legacy of what we have been given in this dunya. It could also be as simple as measuring your food waste. So it could sound a bit technical, measuring, having a scale. It could feel like difficult, but in reality, it's about accountability. It's the waste bins will actually give you the truth. It may not be very nice to look how much meat or rice have we thrown away. So, but when we put these on a scale, and we measure it, we are actually, when we see that we've reduced our waste, we can weigh how much we are grateful and how can we transform it into moderation. Wasatya. So these are my two call to actions from me personally, but it could be any from any of these, as we heard from our speakers and from the guidelines. So for that, I want to close the webinar now. We would like to take any questions we have from our participants. I'm just checking if we have any questions at the chat. Okay. I cannot see any questions in the chat, but does anyone have any questions for any of the speakers or in general? One, two, three. Okay. Okay, great. So if there are no questions, then as we bring the session to a close, I just want to finish the webinar with a final thought. Ramadan is a time of restraint. We restrain ourselves from food, water, and anything negative. But this is also a moment of reflection on how we can reduce any sort of excess and waste that is consuming things in moderation, which was incredibly explained by our guest brother Imam Safed, as well as our guest speakers. So this green iftar isn't just about, it's not just about saving our planet, it's also about saving the spirit of Ramadan. It's about ensuring that our breaking of fast doesn't undo the blessing of the fast. So on that note, I would like to end the webinar. So thank you everyone for your time and for your patience. May Allah accept our fasting in the month of Ramadan. May Allah accept our prayers and your stewardship